Frederick John Fred Perry was a championship-winning English tennis and table tennis player who won 10 majors including 8 Grand Slams and 2 Pro Slams. Perry won 3 consecutive Wimbledon Championships from 1934 to 1936 and was world amateur number 1 tennis player during those 3 years. Prior to Andy Murray in 2013, Perry was the last British player to win the men's Wimbledon Championship in 1936 and was the last British player to win a men's singles Grand Slam title until Andy Murray won the 2012 US Open. Perry was the first player to win all 4 Grand Slam singles titles and completed this career Grand Slam at the age of 26, remaining the only British player ever to achieve this. Although Perry began his tennis career aged 18, he was also a table tennis world champion in 1929. In 1933, Perry helped lead the Great Britain team to victory over France in the Davis Cup. The team's first success since 1912, followed by wins over the United States in 1934, 1935, and a 4th consecutive title with victory over Australia in 1936. From 1927 to 1967, the International Lawn Tennis Federation treated all amateur champions as though they no longer existed, from the moment they turned professional. Perry, who turned pro at the end of the 1936 season, suffered the same fate. Only in 1968, with the introduction of open tennis did this state of affairs come to an end. After becoming disillusioned with the class-conscious nature of the Lawn Tennis Club of Great Britain, the working-class Perry moved to the United States before becoming a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1938. In 1942, he was drafted into the U.S. Air Force during the Second World War. Despite his unprecedented contribution to British tennis, Perry was not accorded full recognition by tennis authorities until his twilight years. In 1984, a statue of Perry was unveiled at Wimbledon, and in the same year Perry became the only tennis player listed in a survey of 2,000 Britons to find the best of the best British sportsmen of the 20th century. Early life. Perry was born in Stockport, Greater Manchester in 1909 where his father, Samuel Perry, was a cotton spinner. For the first decade of his life, he also lived in Bolton and Wallasey because his father was involved in local politics. When living in Wallasey he attended Liskeard Primary School. Perry moved to Brintham Garden suburb in Ealing, West London aged 9 when his father became the National Secretary of the Cooperative Party after World War I. His father became the Cooperative Party Member of Parliament for Kettering in 1929. Perry first began to play tennis on the public courts near his family's housing estate. He was educated at Ealing Grammar School for Boys. Amateur status. In 1928 to Euro 29, Perry won several medals in the single, double, and team events in the World Table Tennis Championships. He had exceptional speed and played with the shake-hand style, attacking the ball low and on the rise. Along with the US, French and Australian amateur championships, Perry won the Wimbledon men's title 3 times in succession between 1934 and 1936. His final triumph was a 6-1, 6-1, 6-0 victory over the German Baron Gottfried von Cramm which lasted less than 45 minutes. It became the quickest final in the 20th century and the second shortest of all time. Perry had been able to pick up the information from the Wimbledon masseur that von Cramm had been treated for a groin strain and was as a result having difficulty moving wide on the forehand. Perry's success attracted the adoration of the crowds at Wimbledon particularly as he contrasted sharply with the privileged background of most patrons and players associated with the All England club at the time. The upper echelons of the British tennis establishment greeted his success more coolly, regarding him as an upstart. After winning his maiden Wimbledon title, Perry recalled overhearing a Wimbledon committee member remark that the best man didn't win. His All England club members tie, awarded to all winners of the championships, was left for him on a chair in his dressing room. In the Davis Cup, Perry led the Great Britain team to 4 consecutive victories from 1933 to 1936, with wins over France in 1933, the United States in 1934 and 1935, and Australia in 1936. Perry competed in a total of 20 Davis Cup matches, winning 34 of his 38 rubbers in singles, and 11 out of 14 in doubles. Professional career. After 3 years as the world #1 tennis amateur player, Perry turned professional in late 1936. This led to his being virtually ostracized by the British tennis establishment. For the next 2 years he played lengthy tours against the best professional player, Ellsworth Vines. In 1937, he played 61 matches in the United States on their big tour, with Vines winning 32 and Perry 29. They then sailed to England, where they played a brief tour. Perry won 6 matches out of 9, so they finished the year tied at 35 victories each. The following year, 1938, the big tour was even longer, and this time Vines beat Perry 49 matches to 35, while the short English tour ended at 4 victories apiece. Don Budge won the Grand Slam in 1938 as an amateur and then turned professional and played a series of matches against both Vines and Perry in 1939, beating Vines 22 times to 17, and beating Perry by 28 victories to 8. Perry also won the U.S. Pro title in 1938 and 1941, held in Chicago in both those years. Personal life. Perry was one of the leading bachelors of the 1930s and his off-court romances were sensationalized in the world press. Perry had a romantic relationship with the actress Marlene Dietrich and in 1934 he announced his engagement to the British actress Mary Lawson, but the relationship fell apart after Perry relocated to America. In 1935 he married an American film star Helen Vinson, but their marriage ended in divorce in 1940. In 1941 he was briefly married to a model, Sandra Bro. Then, in 1945, he married Lorraine Walsh, but that marriage also ended quickly. Perry's final marriage to Barbara Rice in 1952 lasted over 40 years, until his death. They had 2 children, Penny and David. The sister of Barbara Rice was the actress Patricia Rock. Perry had an older sister, Edith. They were both born in Stockport. Edith greatly supported her younger brother throughout his sporting achievements and passed her sporting enthusiasm on to both her sons Walter and Colin. And to Kalina unregistered trademark her son Stefan Kerr, who now lives in Denmark. Perry had a half-sister, Sylvia, and has a great-nephew and great-niece, Daniel and Laura Nightingale. Perry died in a hospital in Melbourne, Australia after breaking his ribs following a fall in a hotel bathroom. Sporting legacy. Perry is considered by some to have been one of the greatest male players ever to have played the game. In his 1979 autobiography, Jack Kramer, the longtime tennis promoter and great player himself, called Perry one of the 6 greatest players of all time. Kings of the Court, a videotape documentary made in 1997 in conjunction with the International Tennis Hall of Fame, named Perry one of the 10 greatest players of all time. But this documentary only considered those players who played before the Open era of tennis that began in 1968, with the exception of Rod Laver, who spanned both eras, so that all of the more recent great players are missing. Kramer, however, had several caveats about Perry. He says that Bill Tilden once called Perry the world's worst good player. Kramer says that Perry was extremely fast. He had a hard body with sharp reflexes, and he could hit a forehand with a snap, slamming it on the rice and even on the fastest grass. That shot was nearly as good as Segura's two-handed forehand. His only real weakness, says Kramer, was his backhand. Perry hit underslice off that wing about 90% of the time, and eventually at the very top level against Vines and Budge that was what did him in. Whenever an opponent would make an especially good shot, Perry would cry out, "Very clever." I never played Fred competitively, but I heard enough from other guys that very clever drove a lot of opponents crazy. Kramer also says that in spite of his many victories, both as an amateur and as a professional, Perry was an opportunist, a selfish and egotistical person, and he never gave a damn about professional tennis. He was through as a player the instant he turned pro. He was a great champion, and he could have helped tennis, but it wasn't in his interest, so he didn't bother. Kramer then recounts several instances in which it was clear to him that Perry was losing matches in which he had given up because he wanted to make sure that the crowd understood that this was all beneath him. Perry, however, recalled his days on the professional tour differently. He maintained that there was never any easing up in his tour matches with Aylesworth Vines and Bill Tilden since there was the title of World Pro Champion at stake. He said, "I must have played Vines in something like 350 matches, yet there was never any fixing as most people thought. There were always people willing to believe that our pro matches weren't strictly on the level, that they were just exhibitions. But as far as we were concerned, we always gave everything we had." A final comment from Kramer is that Perry unwittingly screwed up men's tennis in England, although this wasn't his fault. The way he could hit a forehand or snap it off like a ping-pong shot Perry was a physical freak. Nobody else could be taught to hit a shot that way. But the kids over there copied Perry's style, and it ruined them. Even after Perry faded out of the picture, the coaches there must have kept using him as a model. Clothing label. In the late 1940s, Perry was approached by Tibby Wenner, an Austrian footballer who had invented an antiperspirant device worn around the wrist. Perry made a few changes to create the first sweatband. Wenner's next idea was to produce a sports shirt, which was to be made from white knitted cotton pique with short sleeves and a button placket like Rena copyright Lacoste's shirts. Launched at Wimbledon in 1952, the Fred Perry tennis shirt was an immediate success. The white tennis shirt was only supplemented in the late 50s when mods began demanding more varied color palettes. The Fred Perry shirt became the garment of choice for diverse groups of teenagers throughout the 1960s and 70s, ranging from the skinheads to the Northern Soul scene. The brand's logo is a laurel wreath. It was based on the original symbol for Wimbledon. The logo, which appears on the left breast of a garment, is stitched into the fabric of the shirt. The brand is now owned by a Japanese corporation. The brand was previously the clothing sponsor of British tennis player Andy Murray. Memorials, UK. A bronze statue of Fred Perry was erected at the All England Lawn Tennis Club in Wimbledon, London in 1984 to mark the 50th anniversary of his first singles championship. It is located at the Church Road Gate. Perry's hometown of Stockport has numerous memorials to the former tennis champion. For instance, there is a blue plaque commemorating the house where he was born. In September 2002, a designated walking route called the Fred Perry Way was opened through the Metropolitan Borough of Stockport. The 14 miles route from Woodford in the south to Reddish in the north, combines rural footpaths, quiet lanes and river valleys with urban landscapes and parklands. Features along the route include Holsworth Mill and Square, the start of the River Mersey at the confluence of the River Tame and River Goyt, Stockport Town Centre, Vernon and Woodbank Parks in the Happy Valley. The route also passes through Woodbank Park where Perry played some exhibition tennis matches. In November 2010, Prince Edward, Earl of Wessex and John Perry, Frederick Perry's grandson, opened Fred Perry House in Stockport. The building, which is the borough's new civic headquarters, will be used by various local government agencies. In June 2012 a blue plaque was unveiled on the house at 223 Pitchanger Lane, Ealing, where Perry lived between 1919 and 1935. World, Perry was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island in 1975. Perry received a Doctor of Laws degree, honoris causa, from Washington and Lee University on June 4, 1987. He had coached the W&L tennis team in 1941 and again in 1947. In the United States, 2 drives in El Paso, Texas and Los Angeles, and a street in Springfield, Tennessee, are named after Fred Perry. World Table Tennis Championships, Gold, 1. Silver 1. Bronze 4, 1928 Stockholm, Silver Doubles. Bronze Mixed Doubles. Bronze Team, 1929 Budapest, Gold Singles. Bronze Doubles. Bronze Team. Major Finals, Grand Slam Tournaments, Singles, 10, Pro Slam Tournaments, 4 Finals, Doubles, 4, Mixed Doubles, 5, Pro Slam Singles, U.S. Pro Championships, Performance Timeline. Fred Perry joined professional tennis in 1937 and was unable to compete in the Grand Slams tournaments. Records, all-time records, see also, List of male tennis players, list of world table tennis champions, tennis records of all time, men's singles, tennis records of the Open era Euro men's singles, references. Bibliography, Macaulay, Joe. The History of Professional Tennis. External links, International Tennis Hall of Fame, official Wimbledon website profile, Fred Perry official website, Fred Perry Way route map, Fred Perry record.